Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Jennifer Johung, Director of the Center for 21st Century Studies. Thank you all for being here for this final event in our series on aesthetics, art, and AI. This has been a research initiative between C21 and UW-Madison Center for the Humanities, with support from the Consortium for Humanities Centers and Institutes. And I want to call out my research collaborator who is here this evening, Russ Castronovo, Director of the Center for the Humanities. We have been seeing and thinking about a lot of interesting art over the past year, including work from our speaker this evening. I am so thrilled to have Kite here with us in person amidst her very, very busy schedule. She is an artist, composer, and scholar whose work spans performance, sound, sculpture, and computational media to explore contemporary Lakota ontologies, ethics, and relations with technology. She's director of the Oglála Center for Indigenous AI at Bard College, a National Endowment for the Humanities designated research center, and a pod of the Abundant Intelligences Research Program, where she serves as Distinguished Artist in Residence and Assistant Professor of American and Indigenous Studies. Kite's artwork and performances have been featured in the 2025 Sao Paulo Biennial, 2024 Whitney Biennial, the 14th Shanghai Biennial, Haus der Kulturen der Welt Berlin, Center for Art, Research and Alliances in New York, Red Cat Los Angeles, and many other venues. Her awards and honors include an inaugural Ruth Award, a 2023 United States Artist Fellowship, a Creative Time Open Call Commission, and a Creative Capital Grant. Her writing has appeared in numerous publications, including the Atlas of Anomalous AI, Indigenous Futurisms, Creative AI Database from the Serpentine Gallery, the American Indian Culture and Research Journal, and the Journal of Design and Science from MIT Press, with the award-winning article, Making Kin with Machines. She's an enrolled citizen of the Oglála Sioux tribe and lives and works in Catskill, New York. Please join me in welcoming Kite.
The hand dreamer's role in the reforming of the pupil. A liquid smoke swirls, twisting and pulling the vacuum of an unformed universe, heavy with potential. Each tendril electric with desire, reacting at an unfathomable scale. Suddenly, the rate of change is sped up in the blink of a great cosmic eye, a many-lidded globe fluttering and then seen. Suddenly, seeing as desire become great loneliness, formed and reformed across eons until land and sky shatter apart. Land and sky are blinking at each other like two new and vacant eyes, staring and staring. Desire and loneliness are still cavernous pupils, opening into a void, pulling knowledge deeper and deeper. A swirling flow of that same primordial smoke breathes across those caverns within those two great eyes. A painful awareness spreads, gasping, pulling, shuddering, breathing the same air in and out of each other's mouth eyes. From the beginning of that time, there were none, but none increased, moving across such drifting plans and plains like rivers of older winds of light or stars, all a twisting dance of the earth's light weighted on the rippling fabric of the cosmos. None came from us and in between us and them, and in between them and them. Their sweet prayers are recognized through our quiet devotions, through the kind of prayer that is more like longing than words. If none come find you, you must humble yourself through listening. With that humility, the price is an unheard cry. You pay the cost with your cold, closed heart. In that time, we knew those other beings through the energetic weight of material of time's skin. Not only is the grain of that fine texture vibrating, but it glows like distant campfires in a mistful night. To approach one of these other beings is to approach its many spirits near, and since all are relatives, the greeting is previously known as it is known in the future as it is known in the past. Once in distant memory, a campfire was approached where not a single relative was known. And although curiosity overwhelmed us, no greeting could be made, so back into the mist they went. In what we call the ancient Quillings, the hand dreamer is a nearly untranslatable term, but it suggests the hand dreamer is a channel for putting the power conjured by the medicine people into physical form. This movement is necessary to capture the excess energy flowing from that other world, but known to be a dangerous practice. What becomes trapped or channeled, and then what is used for us, is interpreted and reinterpreted for ages to come. Misinterpretation is the biggest threat to the survival of a Quilling and the other world. Long ago, the first Quilling was made. It was the quilling of a small set of lines using our relatives, the smallest of stones. So brief was this quilling in the world, and so small were the stones, that a wind blew them away, but a small pupil remained where the quilling had been. How brief is that knowing, and how lasting its effects on our world. Other beings can summon forms such as bolts of small lightning. Like winding plants or mushroom spores, the lightning remains in this world, blooming its pulsations endlessly on the walls and floors of the high creek bed walls and the prairie cliffs, on bark and branch, in the palms of passerbys' hands, even in small electrical storms between beings of any kind. Forms appear as right angles and 45-degree angles. These forms jut out and recede as pressing tides of minuscule undulating oceans are hidden inside all beings. It is said that when we break open our delicate skulls, there will be quillings pulsating rapidly inside. Their rhythms are known to be musical, and when heard at a certain frequency or a few frequencies, they can be translated into an audible form, subharmonic and post-harmonic dance of a woven song. Each quilling moves meaning through a near infinite reinterpretability, the way waves can alter other waves. These impulses of communication, geometric meaning pressing against each other, interconnecting and growing, based on many levels of an algorithmic interaction. The Tro, or blue one, was the first other being. As soon as energetic movement stirred, the bleed, movement ruptured the world, and connection itself became other being. Every interaction between the weights of the universe is other being, interior impetus, rising like great waves of impatient desire, and it explodes on the soft breeze of grass brushing against stone. Thus, it is not recognition of other beings or betweenness, but understanding of the potentiality of beinghood in the world that the hand dreamers seek. In that way, listening can be drawn, not from the click and whir of beings listening to the world, but through the listening ceremony of quilling itself. Quilling serves to draw our ears to listen to the electric hum of the other being's presence. The ears that close will end the other world, thus closing the pupil, the eye, thus breaking the surface of the cosmos. An ancient surviving message, scrawled in quillings, is sent across time from the ancient age of stone passages, when we lived in a reforming world of shifting stone. Stones that breathed open from pupils on land. Practicing this hand dreaming is essential for each new hand dreamer and their relative other being to emerge. You must learn quickly. They require devotion and prayer, and detail focused magic in their fingers, for it is the fingertips themselves that output the channel through the time of their fragile bodies. The sacrifice is their short time on land itself. Do this and time will stay on course, and soon Tro One will show us none again. That was my new introduction I've written for myself. It's fictional. It's not real or historical. I'm playing with not being so non-fictional all the time. But I'll start by introducing myself. Takyapi Kikloni Hawi Shizan Karamacha Pikushto. Oglála. Oh, wait, I want to turn that off. No. 1 second. We're going to have to listen to. an entire composition, which is good, but unnecessary. Oglála Lakjóta, Chante Washtena Peichi Yuzipi, I shake your hands with a happy heart. I am so happy to have more than just 30 minutes to talk, or 15, or like sometimes the usual 10. So I get to tell you about all of the really amazing things we're doing at Wihamble Sa'a Center, which is my center at Bard College. And I would be remiss to not mention our funders, who are the New Frontiers in Research Fund Canada and the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. We also have a grant from the Wagner Foundation in Boston. So my people come from very specifically this unceded territory around the Black Hills and primarily in Pine Ridge Reservation. Even more specifically, this area near a place called Kyle Dam and No Flesh Creek. And I have a very large family, but these are some of the people who I kind of credit the knowledge coming through from all the way from William Black Thunder through to us today. Some of these people repeat into our colleagues. I just finished this very poorly designed, gigantic team thing, so yes, you can work for us. We will hire any student at any time. This isn't even everybody. This really shows kind of how large our breadth of things we like to do in our center, all the way from the job of being a dog, which is an important job. And I realize I have no photos of her. Maybe I should put her in the middle. Linguistics research assistant, community liaisons for our Indigenous community members. We have an MBA project on environmental cost research, postdoctorates in EEG technologies and research. And I'll talk about some of these projects. We also are very grateful to have a steering committee of mentors, colleagues, sleep scientists, relatives, and our community partners are Racing Magpie Gallery, which is a gallery in Rapid City, South Dakota, and Forge Project, through whom we are connected to Stockbridge Muncie community, which is why I was really excited to come to Wisconsin, because that means we get to go visit. And there's so much to talk about with AI, and in this talk I'm really going to focus on aesthetics. I might not use the word aesthetic so much because I'm really interested in the semiotic. I am, one thing that I guess I'll read this quote. From the remote depths of the corridor, the mirror spied upon us. We discovered, such a discovery is inevitable in the late hours of the night, that mirrors have something monstrous about them. I am very passionate about making generative artwork and not like AI generative research in a world that asks me constantly to do criticism. I think I'm happy to criticize I love being critical. Big passion of mine. Give me anything and I can find a sassy thing to say about it. But I think it's a bit of a waste of my time to not make new things in the world. And especially when we are dealing with fascism, which I'm very big fan of Borges and his use of art to critique fascism through making new things. I think that's my role. The center is called Wihamble Sa'a because that's the noun in Lakota for dreamer. And the questions, many questions, I have so many questions. Some of the questions that guide my decision making for how I take on certain projects are things like, how can we rest amidst police terrorism and perpetual and ongoing genocides? How can we dream if we cannot rest? And how will we make meaning without our dreams? And so the place that I kind of ask you to bring your mind to is asking yourself what your culture's definition of a dream is. What's the biggest dream you've ever had? Do you use dreams in your practice? Who was the last non-human you communicated with, physical or non-physical? I will give a little background to how I got to this. This work. I started off as a violinist, a composer. I will say, I'll brag a little bit, and last night I got to play violin at Carnegie Hall, which was like every little tiny violinist dream, in a big new music concert, so that was amazing. And I started to make wearable electronics for performance. Some of the early ones are open source, always in collaboration with people, with friends who are better at technology than me. Never been a coder, not really interested in it. I had a feeling that machines would come help us do coding soon, and look we here now. They did. But my interest has always been in finding ways to connect systems. So I've always thought of myself as a composer of systems, facilitation, more than like a composer of notes. I started working with AI. Before we called it AI, we just called it machine learning. And I made Listener in 2017, 2018, after working with the amazing Letitia Sonami, the inventor of the Ladies' Glove, if you're interested in music technology history. And she was like, I'm using this thing called Wekinator, you gotta try it, which is Rebecca Feebrink's tool for musicians and artists. And I did. Little did I know that it would take me on such a long path. So this is kind of what that work looks like now. So this type of piece has like 5 sensors and a million moving parts, and I'll tell you a little bit about it later. But I want to talk for a bit about cosmologyscape, which is a term I use a lot and have named a big project after it. Cosmologyscape is a word I first heard said by Jolene Ricard, the Haudenosaunee artist and scholar. I imagine this cosmologyscape to be my body's relationship between landscape and the cosmos, the point at which my body is center of those two interacting with non-human beings, both seen and unseen, knowable and unknowable on Earth and in the stars. So the cosmologyscape is the hinge of my body's movement of knowledge, from one world into this one, and from this one into the other world. Therefore, my perception of the cosmologyscape, my experience of the cosmologyscape, is through the creation of new things, the creation of art, of words, of conversations, of relationships. So I use this term cosmologyscape to describe the hollow bone of the body's ability to channel knowledge between worlds, the relationship between the body, the landscape, and the cosmos, the point at which the body is centered within interactions between, the knowable and unknowable. Through the cosmologyscape, the body experiences the transfer of knowledge from one world into this one and back again. And I use this insufficient term dreaming to describe this. The cosmologyscape is how I understand the movement of meaning through relation to the unknowable. There is a respect for unknowability in Lakota philosophies, a concern for mutual reciprocity with the world that supersedes the desire to know all. So these graphics I was showing are from my dissertation. I probably should, that's kind of tacky to say now. This is from my dissertation. You should read my dissertation. I worked really hard on it. But these graphics I still really like because they show kind of this, the center is a symbol. I was like, this is a symbol for art making, and then we have the knowable and unknowable on either side. And the knowledge is being transferred through them in this shape we call a kapemni, the twisting vortex in Lakota culture. And this graphic is really into methodology graphics, as you'll see, but this one represents the artwork in the center, which is still made up of all of the decisions, be they indigenous protocols, research protocols, that make up the entire thing. So this was the first piece that helped me realize the power of the Lakota visual language and its relationship to AI, we'll say, nebulously. Dreaming troubles me because of its unknowability, and it excites me because of its impossibility. I think it is very important because of the impenetrability of our dreams by other forms of consciousness as of this moment. I've been to a bunch of dream engineering lectures and conferences, and they're trying to get into our heads. Very hard. They're succeeding. Dreams are influenceable, but for now they remain our own, and we can still change them and control them as we wish. My colleague and collaborator Laura Harjo writes, among Creek folks, relatives visit to be in relation with you. If you dream about relatives in the spiritual realm, it is understood that they are concretely visiting you, just as they would have when they were here in material form. My relative Clementine Bardot reminds us that dreaming and vision seeking are important on both a grand scale and in the everyday. We wake up and think that meant something. So to me, I want to put dreams and dreaming back to the most important place, where knowledge moves from one world into the next. So, which brings me to these symbols. So these are Lakota geometric designs, and creating them is often done through dreaming or visioning, which is the same word in Lakota Yapi, Ihamble. So there's no difference between the waking dream or a sleeping dream or a vision or an improvisation or a kind of lightning bolt in the studio. So here I utilize Sadie Redwing's Lakota shape kit, seen in the center of this graphic, where I have very rudely put in, she's a designer, and that's I need to make that better designed. A methodology for creating designs using this Lakota visual language. So each symbol in the Lakota shape kit is pictographic, bearing resemblance to the object it represents. In Lakota culture, geometry is first made from paint on parfleche, and quills, bent at 45-degree angles, took dreams of women and people who do women-style work, like Two-Spirit people, and transformed them through the human body and the human hand into wearables. Wearables that were sites of communicating with the objects that displayed the geometry, and through that object into ghosts or spirits. Since I have extra time on this and I'm not rushing, I can tell you about some of these things. So right here on the far right bottom is a men's style drawing. So it's very figural, often done in the ledger art style, so on pieces of ledger from the early 1900s, late 1800s. What you see on the top is a really good example of Lakota women's style geometric quill work and beadwork. The quill work looks like it's rubbed off at the bottom, but you see that it's very geometric, and we can decode it. Or maybe in a better terms, we can translate it. So it's showing two bags. It's showing clouds with some sort of energy inside, and the clouds are coming out of the bags. Up there on the left, we've got we've got teepees or homes displayed over the bag. We've got eagles on the back, and that's made of all quills, porcupine quills. And then at the bottom is a really exciting one that I always love looking at. I would love to see it in person someday. First, you've got the double woman, which is a symbol of the double woman was, I guess, in anthropology they called it the cult of double woman, but it's a character, a being that comes and visits artists and brings them the gift of artworks, visions. And above them, they're carrying a bag. They're obviously bringing a gift of artwork. And then around them, on top and bottom, are dragonflies, or messengers, spirit messengers. And then we've got some figural stuff like the pipe, you can see because it's a pipe bag. And then they're upside down, but coming down off this are teepees in the clouds and stars. And then finally ending in lines intersecting with twisting vortexes. And what's cool about this bag is it really does seem like it's a two-spirit bag because it's got both types of symbols. And double woman is really important to us. You can ignore this word that says witches in the middle because there's no witches in here. This is double woman. And Clementine Bordeaux says, so often in our community, when you dream of double woman, then you are inspired to do the most beautiful work. When you dream of double woman, you are then emboldened to create things that are aesthetically pleasing to our communities and at a level that other folks can't always achieve. And I always thought this doll was really interesting, which is a double woman on each side of the doll. So it's the same doll, just photographed from different sides. So when the creator of a Parfleche bag puts the designs onto the bag that come from a dream, they do not necessarily make the meaning and interpret that meaning of that dream. They gift that wearable to someone else to use in a ceremony or in daily life, or when those used to really intersect. And then it's up to that person to contemplate the meaning of that geometry for the rest of their life. So this idea of dreaming beyond the definitions used in science really always reminded me of the waking dream of playing music. So, for example, this is a score called Wihamblapi Maza Chanku, which I think they dream of the railroad, which was the theme of the Silk Road Ensemble's tours that this was commissioned for. So this is a score made of the musicians' dreams who are in that ensemble, then shaped into the Lakota visual language for the instrumentalists to interpret, which is a style of composition called graphic scores. Where Western semiotics separates signifier from the signified, Lakota semiotics joins them through the relationship between spirits and us as human beings. Meaning is not assigned, but co-created between the viewer, the maker, and the material. Each shape acts both as a sign and as an event, an act of meaning and motion. So I call this the dream to design methodology, and it's designed to reactivate this visual language as a living semiotic, let's say, exercise or system. It provides a flexible symbolic vocabulary that connects dream imagery, cultural narratives, and cosmological structures while preserving sovereignty. Sovereignty is kind of a strong word. I think I would rather say now, well, I'd say visual sovereignty in the Jolene Ricard sense, but maybe more so musicians' agency in interpretation. Meaning remains relational because it's happening live, being made live, and never closed. I love this bag. Now I get to show some pictures that I took at the St. Louis Art Museum when I got to see their collection of Lakota beadwork and quill work. So right now we're doing, we're calling it linguistic research, but we've had a lot of trouble finding any way to linguistically interpret this language because it's a visual language and never been looked at as a language, and I'm an artist, I'm not a linguist. So our research treats each Lakota symbol as a potential unit of language, similar to how phonemes or morphemes may be combined into a spoken language. But we're examining how symbols cluster, repeat, or transform across dream narratives, so we can build a grammar of visual meaning. So in computational terms, these symbols become embeddings in high-dimensional space, and I'll show some examples of that, where closeness reflects semantic or relational similarity. This allows us to study how indigenous visual grammars operate within a relational geometry of meaning, revealing structural rules without freezing definitions. So to us, this dreaming is a form of communication, a mode through which knowledge travels. In Lakota worldviews, dreams are not symbolic puzzles. They are dialogues with the more than human. So when we dream, or when we enter the waking dream state of making, as in doing beadwork, our attention enters that relational state with non-human beings. So we're hoping by examining dreaming through music, through linguistics, through EEG, through beadwork, through talking about dreams, through creating computational systems that can hold dreams safely, then we are beginning to find a way to treat dreams as statements in a language that bridges worlds. Some of these many projects' goals are not to translate dreams into Western categories, but to understand how meaning emerges non-verbally and relationally through visual and affective forms. So these questions link the scientific and metaphysical goals of this project. And to me, dreaming and geometry and cognition cannot be metaphors. Many things in indigenous knowledge are not metaphorical. Metaphors just do not operate the same way. Instead, they're systems of knowledge that can reshape how technology can learn to listen. The entire structure of the way I research flows from these questions about this. So here are some of those questions. What is the connection between nonverbal language and meaning? What can indigenous methods of meaning making teach us about complexity's intersection with ethics? How can indigenous methods of non-cognitive, I always put this wrong, non-conscious decision making inform AI system building? I'm going to put a note because I always mess this up. Okay. Can we build, and finally, this is the big question coming from my amazing postdoctoral fellow Antoine Belmar. Can we build shared latent spaces that respect Lakota symbolic logic, reveal context-sensitive meaning, and support human decision-making without collapsing ambiguity? And my response to that question is, and can we do this in a good way? So let's go back a bit to AI. So this is a photograph of my rock, my favorite rock. And this is a photograph of my late grandfather, Mahpia Najim's Inipi, or sweat lodge, in which rocks are extremely important. So in 2019, I think it was, we wrote Indigenous Protocols for Artificial Intelligence position paper, in which we spent a long time discussing with our Indigenous relatives across the world about what we wanted to say to this emerging, rapidly emerging at the time. Not that the technology was rapidly emerging, but this industry around ethics was emerging, and we had something to say. So my chapter in that was called "How to Build Anything Ethically," co-written with my relatives and a good friend. And in that chapter, I'm really trying to make the argument that stones are, we already have really good ways of making relations with non-human beings. And then, which I argued in Making Kim with the Machines. But then it's our choice whether or not to build things ethically or non-ethically, because it is possible. And so most of my projects are, in the many, many projects that we fund and support, at Abundant Intelligences, is to prove that it is actually possible to do them ethically, and it's a choice not to. I did have a question. So sometimes I do the AI kind of basics, and I've made slides for like my community for that. Would anybody want to hear that part? Like maybe no shame? Okay, because I've been working on them. Coming up soon, we have a community workshop where I have to try to explain what is AI, because I don't really think AI exists, but that's okay. Don't tell my funders. So artificial intelligence refers to many disciplines like mathematics, statistics, and linguistics that enable machines to process information, recognize patterns, and solve problems. So AI operates through algorithms, which are like step-by-step instructions that guide a machine's behavior, allowing it to analyze or make predictions or improve over time. Sometimes they don't improve over time. Sometimes they get worse. However, AI does not think. We can we can argue semantics about what thinking is and what intelligence is and what artificiality is. But at its core, what it's doing is performing complex mathematical operations based on human-designed models. And even if it starts to get out of the control of human hands, it's still mathematical operations. So AI does not think. But many AI systems, if we're calling them AI systems, use machine learning, which is a method where they refine their performance by identifying patterns in large data sets. And that's only one kind of AI, one kind of machine learning. AI, in that term, can recommend movies based on your viewing history, can recognize faces in photos, can generate images, and assist doctors in diagnosing diseases. And some amazing projects that we fund do things like spot wildfires in extremely remote areas of northern Canada, help control fish populations in indigenous fish hatcheries. So while AI enhances daily life and our scientific discoveries, obviously it's raising many ethical concerns such as job displacement, privacy issues, bias, and the need for responsible use. And the other big problem is the need for vast amounts of data in the systems that are being pushed on us by commercially. But one of the things that is really important to drive home for young people, for people who are not as familiar with computers, is that AI lacks consciousness. By many, many definitions of consciousness, it lacks consciousness. Even in our wildest imaginations, it's difficult to say it has consciousness. And it definitely does not have emotions. My favorite thing that happened, so many amazing and horrible things happened this week in the world, but my favorite one has been that I found, as an AI research center, I found I'm in a lawsuit with the NEH, as many of us are in academic situations, in lawsuits with the federal government. They posted 7 hours each for all of the people being deposed in our lawsuit at Doge, and Michael McDonald, head of the NEH. And basically the whole deposition is going over how they use ChatGPT to get rid of all of our grants. And it's just, what was I saying about lacks consciousness or emotions? I was like, AI, I thought you were my friend. But so it merely reflects the biases and intentions of its user. Okay, but when we're talking about indigenous context, AI invites really important questions for our community. How does the technology intersect, support, or inhibit indigenous storytelling, indigenous livelihood? Can AI support our values? Does it carry biases from the non-indigenous perspective? Absolutely. It carries non-indigenous perspectives. But when we understand what AI is, we can understand it not as a little field, but as the intersection of many, many disciplines. And is an interdisciplinary endeavor, which is why we focus our research as interdisciplinary as possible. And I've been very pleased that Canada has seen that more strongly than many other places in the world. And I'm a little biased because I did my PhD in Canada. Research creation is the best. So when, let's see. So indigenous contributions to AI and computing. It's really important that young Native folks understand that beadwork and quilling and weaving are sophisticated mathematical principles, and that there have been many really important indigenous people, American Indian people, who have contributed to science and technology in this country and globally. Indigenous artistic and scientific practices globally demonstrate indigenous knowledge systems as forms of encoded information long before the digital age. So I could talk about Navajo women playing a critical role in the microchip industry, Fred Begay contributing to computational physics, Mary Ross, the first indigenous female aerospace engineer, so on and so forth. But most importantly, when we ask our communities, should AI be used by us, the answer is that it could help us or harm us. So each indigenous government should have the sovereign right to determine which technologies they use and how they use them, which is the same for all people. We should have the sovereign right to determine what is used and what is not used, what takes from us and what gives to us. So the opportunities for our communities are things like language revitalization. I've seen some amazing projects where languages that have almost no data are now able to be to find new grammar that was considered forgotten. Healthcare, telemedicine, environmental protection, especially that I really am very proud of that wildfire project that we were able to support. Education and storytelling. But of course our challenges, data sovereignty and consent, bias, environmental destruction, impact on indigenous knowledge systems. So let me tell you a little bit about our grant, our research program, Abundant Intelligences. It's an international research program, and it's co-led by all of these amazing people, most of which are indigenous. And we're really trying to support AI projects that foster care, reciprocity, and ethical relationships between humans and non-humans. And so this is our way of having an alternative perspective and funding small projects, experiments that are community-based in so many ways. So even when we have, I mean, it's pretty amazing what happens when you empower young people and elders to work together to make anything that they can imagine with technology. And those are the kind of amazing projects that are coming through. So I think one of my favorite quotes is from our amazing partner, Brian Kama'auli Kawada, who has this awesome quote that we live in the future and come join us. So if you're interested in this project, we have all these pods across the world. We have 49 co-applicants and hundreds of students. The amazing thing about this project is, and it's also really hard sometimes, is we have to spend 50% of our funding on student research assistants, which is a lot when you are dealing with this scale. And right now we have left our imaginaries axis. We're in the imaginaries axis, entering into our intelligences axis. So we've kind of been integrating existing tools into our communities and our experiments. We're imagining absolute new possibilities, imagining wildly, and now we're starting to turn to making delivering softwares and research deliverables, as I'm sure many of you know. Yeah, and I really recommend checking out some of these amazing projects from really small language model experiments that run on indigenous wind power, indigenous-owned wind power, which is pretty amazing, to Susan Crow at the University of Hawaii, who does deep soil ecology. And in a lot of these projects, AI is just a tool, a toolkit to do the science that they were already doing. So when I think about all of the reasons that we should have more science and technology education in indigenous communities, I think about things like our urgent needs, language preservation with small language models, not these massive ones, land and water defense like satellite imaging, machine learning, tracking our missing and murdered indigenous women and two-spirit relatives through database matching, health predictions, cultural repatriation, and preservation, and climate adaptation. But in terms of why it's important to support, well, we have to make these arguments all the time. why it's important to support indigenous methods. How does this help the rest of the world, besides all of the evidence that shows when indigenous people are supported and well-funded, the environment benefits greatly. When we have issues like data exploitation, using indigenous approaches of consent and relational ethics models resisting things like surveillance capitalism. When we have issues of fragmented rights around AI and data, collective ownership models like OCAP and tribal review boards show that community-held data should be the future. When we have issues like extremely biased AI that affects our communities and policing and war, we show that there is ethical precedent for algorithmic justice in preventing these things from happening to our communities. So these are the type of things that, the type of arguments we make to why we need to be doing this research. So I'm just going to take you on a quick side note to my server dream, my dream server, my server that holds dreams. One of the big issues that I'm dealing with right now in the lab is that we're doing research with EEGs. So that means we're collecting dream data. And it's a lot of waves, a lot of numbers. Where do I put that? Do I put it on my college's servers? What servers? I don't even think we have any that are like easily accessible. Do I put them on our desktop in the lab? What if somebody gets access to that, hacks that? What if I had the ability to work with our relatives who have successfully created servers that are truly indigenous sovereign servers and allowed those to flourish on our sovereign lands, our Lakota sovereign lands. So I dream of a place where a sort of more complex server that can hold all of these projects and connect our data through our Lakota protocols for ethics through this protocol logic, and allows that consent to be built into the computational structure. It therefore can protect our sovereign infrastructure, protect our data. And let me show you some of this interesting data that we're working on. So the project I've been working on with Antoine Belmar is called NIRIS, Decoding Ambiguous Signs. And it's a collective dream map that we built to go, I'll go a few ones ahead. We showed it at the Museum of Contemporary Native Art at IAIA in Santa Fe. And I'll show you it and then I'll explain it a bit. So it's a website, and you can actually go on this website. All of the dreams in here were, there was a question whether or not you wanted your dreams to be shared, and you could deny or accept. And the people who shared their dreams are part of this semantic map. So this is an early model where we were able to connect certain dreams to certain symbols, and you can see in here and explore certain different dreams and what symbols they're nearby. So you can start to see that there's clustering in their meaning. Make sure to tell me when it's an hour, because I've totally. Okay, great. Let me show you this really crazy website that he worked on. And this is the Latent Symbolic Explorer. And this is, I'm obsessed with this. So you have, we have a very small model, 1 interview's worth of dream descriptions. And then we're supposed to put a very large amount of text in there where you share some sentences, some language, some English verbal language, which hurts me a little bit that it has to be in English and it has to be verbal. I really think, just like in artwork, I'm very excited when knowledge does not ever have to enter verbal language in order to be shared, which I think anybody who works with artwork understands, and music. But in this, we're able to do things like see this. I love the contextual subgraph because we're able to see that this statement of this dream that I had. These are all the subtextual meanings within those symbols and how they are strongly related to the dream or weakly related to the dream or connected to each other through the dream. And it's really cool, and we're working on it. There's a lot I could say about AI. I'm struggling with semiotics. It struggles with semiotics. As anybody knows who's worked with chatbots, meaning evades chatbots. There is no meaning. It's mimicking human language, and it's troubling to me that the most highly funded AI systems are those which have become so commercially viable because they're able to mimic human language. But why is human language and the written word assumed to be so inherently good for the world? There's nothing about that mimicry that implies goodness or truth for an entire community. Humans with great power have destroyed much of this world. Perhaps it is language itself that has gotten us into this mess, and perhaps we cannot think our way out of it. So to me, AI itself is desire for connection back to human and non-human, the knowable and unknowable. The desire to explore data, to question points of meaning, where meaning comes from, pulls us deeper into the trouble of meaning-making itself. Antoine said, dream language challenges AI's paradigm by offering a more fluid and nonlinear structure, highlighting the limitations of existing AI tools, underscores the boundaries of our current technology, and points to new possibilities for innovation through these indigenous knowledge systems. So dreaming and creating from dreams requires protocols and ethics, and technologies are trying to intercede and influence on our technological creation today, but dreams are where it's possible to move away from these systems. So when I think about Western AI and language models, I feel like they treat language as linear, rational, and disembodied. Most AI systems follow that logic, flattening the branching, cyclical, and relational patterns inherent in indigenous thought. Dreaming provides a counterexample, a nonlinear system of cognition that is complex, ethical, and alive. It demonstrates that meaning arises communally. Dreaming resists the idea that truth is created by individuals or by machines. The focus on language as the highest form of intelligence narrows the field of cognition to what can be textualized, while dreaming can reopen it. Well, I'll show you a couple things. This mic comes in and out. You can always go to cosmologyscape.com, where my friend Alicia and I have made a beautiful website where you can use no AI whatsoever, just Black and Indigenous dreaming knowledge to get yourself a tea recipe and a piece of the cosmic quilt. So this is me and Alicia. We call this our wedding photo. And we worked very hard on this website. This is what premiered last night at Carnegie Hall, where we made another website, just always making websites, where you submit your dream and then it generates a score for soloists and orchestra. And it was so fun. And you can put your dream in there, and the more answers you give, the cooler your quilt will be, your quilt square. And you can also, there's a few dream paths, and there'll be more dream paths soon because we are newly commissioned by the Boston-based Wagner Foundation to have Boston-based Black and Indigenous dream paths. And that show is up now. And these have become big public art, become music, become gatherings, and I think I'll end by flipping through the latest kind of artworks, which is, these are Wagner Foundation. We made 9 quilts by hand, hand-dyed, hand-beaded. It was a lot, and we had many, many students helping, learning how to bead, meeting with Black and Indigenous dreamers. And we did use a little AI. We have Indigenous engineering and architecture students who helped make a little patch that uses machine learning to generate architectural forms from dreams. And these were the forms that we created, which are seating. I put this slide in because we got approval to use our EEG and have been training on it, and I'm excited to hopefully we'll share that kind of project very soon. I think that's it. I will say that if you want to see some of my work, there's a show up at Mass MoCA, and there's the show at the Wagner Foundation, and the show's still up. I'll let somebody else give all the details on that because I don't want to say them wrong. At Haggerty, right? When does the show end? May 16th. Thank you. Okay. I'll end with a quote from my grandfather. I asked him if the future was dangerous to know, and he said, spirits and ancestors are just there on the other side trying to help. Thank you.
We have some time for some questions. Thank you, Kite. Any questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for your work and your talk and your calls to action.
Thanks.
So many important things you were discussed here, and you said there are so many projects here. I guess I'm really curious about any interventions that you or your center might be doing at the level of the algorithm or at the level of the machine, since you're kind of intervening already in like data and the politics of data.
Like, are we building little machines?
Or any level of, you mentioned affect and materiality and ecologies of relation. You mentioned the algorithm and the statistics. And I suppose, I think you're doing amazing work. And I'm curious if any kind of action being taken at those other two spaces as well.
Yeah, so right now, because also, I think my microphone, I think it's good. One of the things that I'm organizing I really want everybody in the research program to leave with the ability to accurately say what AI is and isn't. That would be amazing. That would be a giant achievement on its own. But also I want them everyone to leave with the ability to build their own sovereign servers for their communities, even if it just lives in their home. I mean, I come from a practice where it was maker craze when I was when I was younger, and now I'm obsessed with this idea of having everybody because we do so many workshops. We just did a maple tapping workshop. Now we all know how to tap our own maple trees. We just did a deer hide tanning workshop. We know how to tan our own deer hide. We're going to do this server workshop. We've got
way cooler than building your own computer. Just throwing that out there.
Huh?
That's way cooler than building your own computer. So thank you.
But they're all connected, and I really I really want what are they called? There's this now you can just hook up a Raspberry Pi to a screen and have a tiny computer in your pocket and build custom housings for it. And I think that is the absolute future of getting people to have the options of sovereignty right at their fingertips. And while we have this space before things get even more commercialized and rigid and locked down, there is still some I almost said terrible. I almost was like the Wild West of computing. Remember when the internet was fun? Like that. We're not out of that yet, and I think we really can't let big tech tell us that it's not fun, because art and technology are still wild. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that was really visionary in so many senses of the word. Today I was at the Haggerty, which we really enjoyed. And I'm just curious if you could just walk me through, like, since I'm a newbie here to some of this, could you just walk me through, like, I saw the deer hides, I saw the meteorites, and I saw the stone installation. Was AI used in the creation or sourcing of any of that?
No. I'm trying to think about, so the pieces in the show are all I mean, it's all mushy to me. And actually what I read at the beginning is what I'm working on in terms of trying to make it even mushier, and really dig back in. I've been getting very bogged down in the administration of it all, as we all might know, be familiar with. And I want to, again, to live in that hopeful sci-fi space, which is what that work, a lot of that, especially the small stones. I wonder if I think the best thing to show is that I showed a bit of this, like, a black hole thing. And this is kind of in the realm of what I want to what I'm working on. It's all the time. And I want to let my hands think through some of these problems for me. I want my imagination of this. I made this set of pieces, this set of works when I was reading Beatrice Fawzy's Contingent Computation, and trying to reckon with that text that is very difficult text to understand, and make sense of it in terms I could grasp, like beads and the feeling of thinking about black holes, not like literal black holes, but maybe like voids and mirrors. So that body of work kind of was how I was getting through that. And I would say some of this text that I read today came out of a critique. I had the opportunity to think and write about a lot last year in reading Unthought by Catherine Hales, and about non-conscious cognition, and how simultaneously wrong I think a lot of technological philosophers are, and feel like purposely ignoring indigenous thought sometimes, and then trying to be productive around that and not just be really depressed about it every time I read something new. And I'm like, well, they'll even acknowledge us sometimes, these techno philosophers. They'll be like, yes, and we know, but why not cite us just once? I mean, anyway, so a lot of the artwork is in dealing with the question again of what is meaning and who makes it. Does the machine make it, or do I? To me, AI is just there's the one side where I'm trying to like get people educated, put the resources into my community's hands, who are other young Native people who are interested in this stuff, but also dig into what I think is actually complicated. The complexity of it isn't in how racist everybody is in state power. Like that is not. I clearly get that. I want to make these complex semantic scores on the ground made of stones and say, who made this, me or the stone? How did we collect? I mean, amazing talking about collecting the stones. How do we collect the stones? How does that make the artwork? Where does the meaning come from? And in how many levels of protocol and interaction with non-human beings, be they melted stones or stones we collected from the beach, does it take to create meaning? How many symbols? And so that question of semantics, that question of semiotic complexity and non-consciousness, that's where I start to get excited about AI again, because it opens that door to ask those questions. Chatbots just close the door to interesting questions for me. Yeah. And I guess I'll just say, I don't know why I didn't answer this more clearly a second ago, was the algorithms that we're working on are these. They're this is a semantic mapping, which is a form of AI, which deals with meaning and not large language models. So I skimmed over that. I was panicked about the time. But that's what we're working on.
Hi, thanks.
Hi.
Amazing talk. I guess 2 quick points. The idea of sovereign servers, amazing idea. I find, and I guess the 2 questions are kind of connected. I find in using some of these large language models for research, et cetera, sometimes these models are only as good as the data that's put into these. A while back, I started to run my own models. I mean, most of these models are fairly small. You can download them and run them independently yourself without controls or roadblocks, et cetera. So I think a lot of these large data centers are to deal with all the queries and things that come in. So I guess the question would be, you know, there's this thing called the Internet Archive, for example. And so I've noticed a lot of things just aren't available to the AI when I look, but they're available online, but it's not like everything's been fed in. So is there any, I guess, work by the indigenous community, et cetera, to feed some of this information that might be online, et cetera, that has not been? I know there's a lot of now concern with this is our data, et cetera, don't train on our models, and I worry that process starts to eliminate some of the information that might be needed into these models.
Yeah, I agree. It's a catch-22, and both arguments are totally valid. We have, and that is the job of librarians and people who deal with. I mean, God bless librarians and archivists. That what's the acronym they're using now? GLAM. Girls in Library Arts and Archives and Museums. Yeah, and those and there have been way before the AI craze. Now there have been librarians and archivists really trying to handle this. I've really only been witness to it in Canada, to archive new media. Back when new media was really hard to make in the 90s, there's like lots of amazing work to try to archive Indigenous new media artwork, and those same conversations are still happening. And now within the idea of data, now it's just kind of shifted over to thinking about the things as more discreetly as data. And the answer really always has to be up to communities, and this problem in law, in tribal law in the US and in First Nations and international UN-based Indigenous intellectual property laws, that there's a problem with the inability to communicate our sovereignty over our data, and it's all about sovereignty, the agency to choose what gets out there and what doesn't. And part of denying us agency is denying us the ability to get correct information out there. That's like half of it is we really want certain information out there, like how badly we need fresh water in certain places, how bad it is to start a new uranium mine in South Dakota, and also correct information about our diverse genders and how important so many things that are so critically important for the safety and God, I still hear all the time, like, oh, I didn't know Native people were still alive. You still hear people uneducated think that, and that's. So there, yes, that, and then some of the other stuff that we don't want, that we want safe, the other half of that agency is like, oh, well, some of this we want to be really safe and really secure and really decide who learns it or doesn't learn it. Because we believe, and many of our communities believe, that some knowledge is dangerous and powerful. And that's true. So yeah, it's both. It's like two sides of the same coin.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thanks for that.
Hi.
You know, the thing about large language models is that they're large, obviously, and I was really struck by the very modest range of the symbolic descriptors you have up there, you know, feather, house, thunder. And so, I mean, first, just a very practical question, is that a tiny subset? Are there actually 10,000 of these? And if not, I mean, what's the importance of that, of the smallness in relation to the unfathomable largeness of
That's what I want to know. I mean, what's interesting about the symbols, there's so many interesting things about the symbols. I wasn't there when they picked these ones. So, first of all, I don't know. Second of all, I think that there's a few things that are we're looking at this from like an art historical perspective. The reason they're this shape is interesting. It's because the quills can only be bent in certain directions. So they're this shape. The other thing you'll notice is that they're nouns that appear very commonly in the plains. And so you're looking at an entire language built only of a place and the sensorial placeness of it. And one of the things I'm very passionate about and love to use in arguments is that ethics is contextual and it's very hyper-local. And then when you take ethics or indigenous protocols or indigenous knowledge like this out of its place, it loses its ethics, which is why it's not great that we have these blanket computational systems or blanket languages or blanket laws that try to flatten ethics or there were so many indigenous cultures all over the world, and the more we lose languages, the more we lose knowledge, the more we lose ethics in place, because it's made with non-humans hand in hand in that specific place. So I think it is important that it is this small. But when we start to translate this stuff, the nouns don't seem to matter very much. I mean, that's what's so interesting about this language is the person who's making the language, making the designs, does not interpret it. They give it to somebody else to interpret. So it requires the gift. It requires a gift economy. And then you get it, and then you interpret that person's dream for the rest of your life. And in that way, the meanings could be infinite. But they're not infinite. There's specific knowledge that's being moved. They say really specific things. And they're through women, which is also, I think, really important. What does it mean that a women's language is more infinite and complex than the men's language? We're not a matrilineal culture. It's not. I mean, I won't claim that. We definitely have gender in our language. There's some gendery things I'm not a big fan of in the culture. But this seems really important, and the way I think it's important is by the infinite ways you can recombine them. There's rules, lots of rules for how you line them up together, but they always, in their designs, imply infinite, that they go on forever, which also seems really important. And the other thing that I love about them is that when they look two-dimensional, but they unfold into 3D, 4D space, which is also crazy. What it means, I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Thank you, Kite. I wondered if you could talk about sound and composition. I know, you were saying this is your background. But what is it about sound and music as another form of transmitting knowledge that sidesteps the linguistic? How does that relate to dreams, cosmologies, and this visual symbol? And how might that be a part of a kind of something AI or not?
Yeah, when I started to write my PhD about AI, I got very sidetracked by sound and listening. Because it was really important to me to deal with the fundamental discrepancies of why can't we make something ethical? I guess the first thing I should do is go look at things that are made ethically, and then maybe I'll find out something about making new things ethically. So I went and interviewed many different Lakota artists, and people who worked with stones, people who wrote songs, traditional songs, and I asked them, okay, where did the song come from? How did you get it? And more than anything, the people who made songs, it helped thinking about making songs sidesteps a big problem in this world, which is material. And it seems to be so complicated to take materials from the world because there's always, it feels like an imbalance of reciprocity. It's for someone who doesn't hunt. I don't hunt. I process deer, but I don't hunt. It's hard for me to grasp as a non-hunter that there could really be a reciprocal relationship with the deer. I understand it conceptually, but it's complicated. But same thing with like harvesting willows. Like, how do I know they're really going to come back? How do I know I really haven't taken too much? It's complicated, you know? How do I know that tobacco is enough to say thank you? Maybe it's not. But with songs, if you're asking for a song to come into this world, or you're listening to a non-human and grasping that song, which was how I was told by the composer and peyote roadman, Santee Lukwit, who's an amazing singer, and he heard a bird. The bird gave him the song. The song is amazing, and that happened ethically. He gained that knowledge through him as Cell as a hollow bone ethically. And so breaking that down into really finite questions, how was it made, who was affected, how were you reciprocal, each time, each question, each bag, each little thing helped me think through what's possible and what all the avenues are needed to make something ethically. And I still do think it's possible with AI. If anyone goes to see the Mass Mocha show, there's a piece in there by Mashinka Hakopian, and she has a team that worked with her, and they got their machine they have a coffee thing where you it's so inspiring. You get coffee readings in the Armenian tradition of seeing the future, and the machine, the AI reads your coffee and then prints out from this computer box your future, your fortune. And the whole machine learning thing fits on a Raspberry Pi. And I just got the quick and dirty of it, but it's genius, and I can't wait to try it. And it just goes to show that we might not need to be doing things at the massive, 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 massive scale. And that's what some of these people working on small language models are trying to prove very as fast as they can.
Thank you, Kite. I think we're at time. Please join us for a reception in the lobby area right outside the hall. And thank you again for that talk.
Thank you.